Hey guys, welcome back to The Break. We are here with our friends Juan and Eva, as well as Alex again. Why don't we kick it off? I want to introduce Juan and Eva. Why don't you guys give a little bit about who you are, and then I want to talk about how we met.
Definitely, and thank you guys for having us come on the show. This
Sure.
is super cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to hang out again. So both of our background is in growth hacking, customer acquisition. I actually started my first company in 2010, and I was doing digital services for companies in Kansas City. Right, so I was raised in Kansas City. I was born in Colombia, South America, and no matter what I was doing for my different clients, it was all digital, so there was no sense in us being in the same room, whether it was an app or a website or anything like that. And after some time, I realized that I could just be anywhere in the world. There was no reason for me to be in Kansas City, helping Kansas City clients. So I started traveling around Latin America. I went to Bogota. That's where I met Eva. And then we went all over the place. The Amazon rainforest, we went to Cartagena, we were in Peru, Chile, then we lived in New York for a while, Boston. And while we were traveling everywhere, we realized that there was a need in the travel industry for people to be able to quickly search where the next destination was based on their budget and preferences, and not just based on how most online travel agencies are, which is based on a specific date that you want to travel and destination. So we kind of drafted up this idea, put it out on the internet, and built a community around it, about 70,000 people, and we got it funded by Sprint, the phone company. So we get funded by Sprint, and then we get accepted into another accelerator, not bad. We go through Plug and Play, which is the world's largest accelerator in Silicon Valley, and that's why we moved to California. Then we went through another accelerator, and in the midst of all of that, Sprint stops the funding round that they had started with us. And so we're like freaking out, what do we do? And we realized, you know what, our unfair advantage, our like really good skill set is growth hacking. So we started consulting different VC-funded startups in Silicon Valley on their growth hacking. And we thought we were pretty good, but it turned out we were like really good at it. Yeah, so we started consulting like lots of bigger companies like Fiverr.com. And then that's when we met the CEO of the Google Launchpad Accelerator that's focused on Latino founders. And it turns out that she needed growth hacking. And what she brought to the table was like all of these connections with corporates, with accelerators, with VCs. And so we loved it. And fast forward a bit, now I actually teach growth hacking at UC Berkeley. And we're partnered in the accelerator. And what we're working on right now is helping startups raise between $2 to $10 million. And that's what brings us to today. So actually, we met back when we were working on the travel company still.
Right.
And we met in New York.
No, here.
Oh, we met
over in
Silicon Valley.
Actually, yeah, Silicon Valley.
In the original house.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our background. And Eva has a little bit of a different story leading up to that.
Yeah, I'm originally from Austria. I started my first business out of college, also in marketing. I started working with different startups that were funded by the largest VC in Austria called Speed Invest. And they had an exit to BBVA Bank and didn't really care from where I worked because they were relocating offices. So I went to Bogota, to Colombia, worked with the Austrian embassy there for a little bit. I had previously lived in Mexico and Malaysia, so also big into traveling, kind of a digital nomad lifestyle. I worked for the Austrian embassy, and that's where I met Juan, and from there on, our paths are kind of the same. But yeah, I remember so clearly when we met you guys. It was actually interesting. I think it was the first year that we lived in Silicon Valley. We were still going through the accelerator, and you actually reached out to us via email. I think it was through our Instagram account, because we were in the travel space too, and we were thinking like all that like exploring synergies, like we should just like focus on like work and just like building our business. And back then there's a lot of people around us that want to meet, grab coffee, explore synergies, but back then we were kind of in that mindset of just like grinding, just working all day, every day. But something about the timing, and I think you were also like really consistent. So you're like, okay, sure. Like if they wanna like drive all the way, meet us at our house, like take no time out of our day, we'll do it. We'll explore synergies. And turns out it was like really worth it, and we're still friends, and there are so many synergies that are actually worth exploring. And I think today we would love to share a few lessons of like what we've learned about networking, the kind of synergies that are worth exploring, and the network that you should build when you're starting out, and kind of balancing that with just like grinding and working on your business. And also some advice we have on growth hacking, building traction for your startup, and getting plugged into the right communities.
Exactly, yeah. So today, what I definitely want to touch on is how we met, how somebody networks, how somebody gets into that world, because in the beginning it's intimidating. when we started up, Alex and I, we didn't know anybody.
No one.
So it's a lot of new territory that I think a lot of people can learn from. So why don't you tell the story of actually how you reached out to them?
So
Because we didn't know them.
It's funny because even last night, so I'm thinking about this, and I actually pulled up kind of what I actually reached out to you guys. This is now like a
Perfect.
few years back.
I actually don't know the story. I don't know your part of it. Yeah.
Okay, so from our side, basically what happened was I think it was actually the first time that we were coming out to San Francisco, and we were completely new here. I think we gave the story the last podcast about us coming in full suits. And again, that's kind of hysterical because coming from New York, right? Like that's the way that we approach meetings. But I vividly remember saying to Frank, "Hey, there's these two people. I really want to meet them. They're down in Palo Alto area. We had 1 or 2 meetings down there, and that was great." And Frank's like, "Yeah, like let's see what we can do." And what I remember before that was I got an email, and I'm just pulling it up here, but basically I had sent to you guys, to your admin through Nomad app. Yeah, I said, "Hey Juan and Eva, saw that your comment on Instagram, here's my name, wanted to reach out, was hoping to connect with you guys while in San Francisco in 1.5 weeks." And I remember sending that, and then I think I followed up 2 or 3 or 4 times with almost I would say maybe no answer at first, but then I got a response from Eva saying, "Hey, thanks for reaching out. Yeah, when exactly are you guys going to be here? You guys coming for business or leisure?" And basically keeping it open to see like.
What are these guys
all
about?
What are you guys doing? And so what's funny is like, now fast forward a few years, that's almost maybe a little bit over 2 years ago. And we've just evolved, right? Like both from your side, whether it's from the business angle or just like from a relationship standpoint. So it's just funny to see now, from that point and now to here. It's kind of crazy.
Alex, wow, that's awesome because we're for the first time now in real time like piecing this back together. Do you remember what the comment was that you were responding to via email?
So I don't know the exact comment, but now looking back, I realize that it's definitely a growth hack that you guys have done.
It was automated.
Like it's not you guys. Yeah, exactly. And so it's funny because
looks like you travel a lot.
That's it. That's exactly it.
Looks like you travel a lot. Where are you from?
Check out
you should check. That was exactly it. I'm getting goosebumps because that's exactly it. And I remember getting it, and I was like, "Oh God, what are these guys up to? Like, wow, they're building another travel startup as well. Like, we need to meet with them." And again, this is our first time coming out to San Francisco, so
right.
for meeting other entrepreneurs, this was a big deal for us. Yeah.
Definitely super happy you did reach out, and I remember I think you wore suits and we were just in like sweatpants in our living
pajamas
room.
Probably.
Yeah. Coming from New York, going to San Francisco, even California lifestyle, we've learned it's very different. We said that in one of the other episodes before, but yeah. So when you want to reach out to somebody, you just do it. There's a couple other tactics. I want to get into kind of like the LinkedIn world. So if you guys aren't on LinkedIn, you should definitely be on LinkedIn. Make a profile, put any kind of work experience, any kind of industries that you're in, but start making friends with people. And then when you find somebody that you want to reach out to, they have this great feature where basically it shows who that knows them. So now you can reach out to that person and hopefully they can give you a warm introduction to the person that you really want to talk to. I know we've done that hundreds of times at this point. I know you're kind of like a LinkedIn growth hacker now. So yeah, what can you guys speak to anything in terms of like reaching out to somebody that you're totally not connected to yet, like maybe some steps that you've taken in the past?
Yeah.
Because I know basically now you could probably get anybody you want to on the phone. But before that,
I think I have a good process for trying to get anyone on the phone now, but I certainly haven't cracked it all the way, but I do remember what it's like to start from scratch. And I have a story actually to share with first-time founders. Mm-hmm. Whenever we were in New York, we attended. So we wanted to get into the TechCrunch Disrupt event that was happening in New York City, and then we found out tickets were like $1,500. And we said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Let's still try and just see if we can like sneak in, or if we get anyone's like badge that they threw away, we pull it out of the trash can, try to get in. And we walked up, and the security guard that was operating was a volunteer, and he was just so nice to us. He was like a high school student. He was like, there's nothing I can do. You can't get inside unless you pay $1,500. We're like trying to talk to him, become friends, and he's like, I can't.
Our dreams
Sorry.
were shattered within like 30 seconds.
Our dreams were shattered. and then But we thought, like, you know what? If we can't get into the event itself, let's get as close as we can to the aura of TechCrunch Disrupt. Let's go to one of these after parties. And so we tried to track one down. We went to an after party, and it was full of TechCrunch Disrupt attendees.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately for us, it was the last day of the event, and so it's not like we could get someone's a pass and then go the next day or anything like that. We just went with the intention of TechCrunch Disrupt is a filter for people that have the same mindset and are in the same space. Who can we meet that would be interesting? And we met this guy, and he told us, what I do is startup funding for different companies. We're like, that's amazing. How do you raise funds? That's exactly what we need right now. At the time, we were just thinking in terms of like, what do we need? What do we need? And so how exactly is it that you raise startup funds? And he's like, yeah, I mean, well, hold on. Are you asking how would I recommend that you raise funds, or how do I raise funds? And we're like, no. How do you raise funds? And he's like, and I'll never forget it. And I mean, this like sentence like shaped our career by now. He was like, I just call up my friends.
Oh, wow.
And we were so disappointed by the answer. I was so angry and like frustrated, because it's like, okay, I don't have any friends that I can call up and raise funds for.
I would have waited for a second and been like, okay, that's the joke. What's the real answer now?
Yeah, no, and like that's like the longer answer to his point. It's like you just have to get yourself to a point in your career where you are valuable enough to people. And it took us a really long time to understand that. But that sentence really stuck with us. Fast forward years later, and now what I understand now that I didn't realize back then is that unless I'm delivering value at scale and I'm putting myself in positions constantly where I provide more value than the one that I'm asking, it is much easier to get a hold of people. And now that I'm on the receiving side of people that are hustlers and are pinging me, I would balance that of like, you have to be valuable enough, provide enough valuable resources, understand what it's like to bring value into a relationship. It's not just pinging saying, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time? It's saying, hey, I saw that you have a podcast. My buddy grew a podcast to over 1 million listeners. I can tell you all about it. Also, I'm looking to work on something like this. Do you mind if we talk for 10 minutes? I help you out with the podcast. Maybe you share some thoughts about what I'm working on. Right? That relationship is a lot healthier, and it's much more likely that people are going to want to respond to a message like that. And I would just say that you have to balance the bringing value to just, on the opposite side of the spectrum, there are a lot of people that are so paralyzed by what it means to bring value that they just never even ask. So if you're I never ask, let me just say you like have to start hustling, you have to start moving, you have to like actually put yourself in positions where you do it the wrong way. And you ask, because there's really nothing that's going to break, even if you do it the wrong way. So just do it, A, and then B, even when you do it, you have to completely rewire your mindset and your entire career to map out to being more valuable than what it is that you're taking out of there. And even with really big people, you'd be surprised how much value you can bring if you can just understand what the one thing that you have that they don't. They could be a billionaire, but maybe they're trying to meet more early stage startups. They could be a very successful accelerator, but maybe they need more deal flow. Maybe you know a VC, or maybe like your sister's brother's cousin's friend owns a farm and this person's trying to invest in a farm. Like, you just never know. But if you study the person really well to understand what it is that they're working on and what it is that they want, and you can provide value on that front, that's way better than just cold blasting 100 people saying, hey, can I get 10 minutes? Can I get 15 minutes?
I love all those points, and I just want to add some more super like specific things that you can do when you just start out. And going back to that sentence of how do you raise funds? It's like, I just call up my friends. That can seem really intimidating when you're just starting out, because it's so daunting. It's like, I don't have that network yet. How do I actually get plugged in? And that's also kind of my story. When I started out in entrepreneurship and in startups, I didn't live in any big city. I was pretty far away, but I knew where the big startups hubs were. And what I did was I just went on Facebook. I went into a lot of startup communities, and I just started adding people as friends. And
even though you didn't know them.
Even if I didn't know them, and if they ever responded to me, it was just like, have you met? And people were like legitimately just curious. And it's like, and I would just be honest and be like, no, we haven't met, but I'm a student. I just started my business, and I know a lot of people in the startup ecosystem. Thought it was really cool what you were doing with this and that company. And the overwhelming part of people were just super nice about it, and we just stayed in touch on Facebook. And you can do the same thing on LinkedIn. what I really liked about Facebook is that it's so personal, so it doesn't seem like you're asking something professional from them. It's just, hey, I'm
That's true.
actually
That's a good
interested in you as a person, and you start being really top of mind to them because they see you. If you're professional, you're actually posting about your business events you're going to. They just kind of perceive you as being part of that community. And once you start having like more and more mutual connections, they really just automatically assume you're part of the community.
That's a great point.
I've kind of done that in Austria where I grew up, and I think I met like probably like the 50 like biggest people in the startup ecosystem, but by far not all of them. I'm at least connected to like 200 of them, and most people know me, and they know me from Facebook, and I can ask them for anything. And you can do that same thing with any ecosystem you want to break into. I just recently went to Panama. We were invited by the State Department to talk to some startups there, female entrepreneurs there, and a lot of them were really intimidated. They're like, how do I break into Silicon Valley? And it has a lot to do with self-confidence. So if you are just now starting out, you do have to, like, don't fake it till you make it, but just take the right action steps and then walk in confidence that you can reach out to big people. A lot of them are willing to give back, are willing to get you connected, especially when you do approach it from a value-driven mindset, and you actually offer something to them too.
That's a great point. I also
just start reaching out to them and get connected.
I was saying to you before, and I don't know if I mentioned this to Juan just yet, but basically that same situation happened with ourselves too pretty recently, where I saw a friend of mine who was creating basically a Broadway show. He co-produced it. They did amazing work, and I realized that one of his, I would say, like +1 connection on Instagram was the CMO of Instagram. And so I said, hey, this is a perfect time. I see that he's interested in Broadway. My friend is connected to this guy. Let me reach out. Let's see what happens. And I think just kind of putting yourself in those positions where what's the worst that's going to happen, right? Either he's going to never look at that DM through Instagram, or he says, hey, yeah, let's jump on a call. I'd love to learn. And ultimately, that's what happened. And I think just putting yourself in those situations and getting it out there, I think is huge.
Definitely.
So true. Like,
And
what's going to happen?
Just one more thing I would add to that, though, is people, or not though, but yes, and people that come from outside of these main hubs, whether it's like a financial hub like New York or a tech startup hub like San Francisco, it's like, wow, guys, it's so expensive to live in New York, right? Like anyone, especially growing up in Kansas City, it's like, it's so expensive to live in New York. It's so expensive to live in San Francisco. Everybody knows that. But did you know that there's a behavior that comes along with someone that is able to afford living there? And a lot of that behavior is focus. A lot of that behavior is understanding how to say no to opportunities. So sometimes we come from smaller ecosystems and we take offense when we ping someone. It's like, hey, do you have 20 minutes for a call? It's like, I literally don't. And I'm just as nice as I was when I grew up in KC.
Right.
I'm literally the same guy.
Yeah.
Just as nice, just as kind. I'll make just as many bad jokes. But I just don't have the time. And there's a reason why. It's because I live here. So I don't, like, if I only took random phone calls to just pick my brain or to just chat, nothing would get done.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think the kind of the secret formula, if I were to paint it like that, is to maximize value for the person you're trying to get a hold of and minimize their commitment. Mm-hmm. If their preferred method of communication is just over LinkedIn, then it's just over LinkedIn. We'll just keep the conversation here, and maybe as it gets interesting, then we jump on the phone. But to go straight for an ask of like, I'm gonna be in New York. Do you have 30 minutes for lunch? It's like, okay.
Who are you?
Who are you? There's 19 million people here in the metro. Like, I can't just take time off just because someone's like, oh, I'm in California. Like, great, 30 million people are in California right now. It's like, so and the only reason that I say it that bluntly is because I don't think anyone is being honest enough about what it means to reach out to someone that is potentially that busy. Yeah. It's like, they are that busy. They can still be that kind. They can still be that giving. You just need to maximize value and minimize their commitment. If you are concise and you're very specific about what it is that you bring to the relationship and what it is that you want out of them, that's the best way that I know that you can actually get something out of it.
Yeah.
If you just blast random people out, there's a lot of kind people in the world. You'll convert, but you'll convert 3 out of every 100. And then the other times you maybe look like a doofus.
Yeah.
But if you want to convert 97 out of 100, then you can say, hey, I see what you're working on. I have this value. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm trying to get out of you. Can we talk about it? And if it ends up being that you go out to lunch, great. But if not, then maybe you were already able to get most of the value out of just some quick messages and then moving on to the next thing.
Oh, that's ideal.
Yeah. So in terms of that, I would say definitely do your research. Look up whoever it is that you're trying to get in touch with, either Crunchbase, LinkedIn, whatever kind. There's so many different articles. If they're of a place of power or importance, there's going to be articles, there's going to be things that they're working on. See, like Juan, you just said, what they're working on, what you bring to the table, and offer them, give them some kind of carrot for them to take that
Definitely.
message in the beginning, because they're probably getting swamped with emails and texts and DMs from Alex that if it's not a value add, you're going right into the garbage can.
Yeah, at the very least, offering to buy lunch or something.
Right.
It's so weird, like, hey, can we chat for 30 minutes?
Or like, hey, I'm gonna actually buy you a cup of coffee. I also think too, one huge overarching point about kind of reaching out to someone is actually being relatable to what they're doing. So yes, you could have an ask, and you can go around the motions of DMing or LinkedIn or Facebook. But I think actually, to your guys' point, knowing the person and what exactly they like to do, and relating on that factor, because it's not all about business. I think yes, ultimately you're going to want to talk about your business or talk about your idea, but just actually relating, saying, hey, I just saw that, like, this is a perfect example. Like, hey, I just saw that your kid graduated college, right? Whether that's on Facebook or LinkedIn, they might have tweeted about it, and just commenting on it. I think you become like a real person to them, as opposed to just some nagging person that's trying to get in touch.
Right. So that, I think, is a good strategy for the single person. Let's talk about when you go to an event. Let's say you go to some mixer, you find a group through a Facebook group or a LinkedIn thing or something where you're going to an event, and there's a room full of people that you don't know. And you're new to the industry, you're new to startup world or first-time founder, and you want to talk with people. You have to socialize. I believe strongly in talking to everybody in the room, getting your name out there. You never know when down the line, I mean, there's been plenty of times when somebody that we talked to 3 years ago, kind of like with you guys, like the relationship keeps going. You never know where it's going to grow to. But that initial entry into the room is intimidating. You start sweating. It's a room full of people that are already talking. How do you guys walk up to just a stranger and introduce yourself?
So my answer is probably going to be really different than what you hear from a lot of people, because I haven't cracked this one yet. My direct answer to your question is, I know exactly what I bring to the table. I know exactly what I'm looking to get, let's say, out of people, and then I try to come off as interested instead of interesting. So a lot of people come in and they're like, this is what I'm working on, this is everything I'm doing, and it's like, I'd rather go in and be like, hey, what are you working on? What do you have? And then always knowing, like, okay, I know what my superpowers are. It's growth hacking. I run the growth hacking community in Silicon Valley. Maybe I can connect them to people. Maybe they're hiring people. That's what I can bring to like any cold situation like that. That would be my answer direct to your question. But zoom out, what I actually do is I create content at scale on social media, and I let those relationships come to me instead. So
that's true.
That's more of the real answer, is the wider the net of valuable content that I cast online, the easier it is for me to announce what I'm working on and attract all of the people that are based on how one-dimensional I am about what I'm working on. It's very crystal clear when I was working on Nomad App what I was about, when I'm working now on VentureLink what that's about. So it's really easy for me to filter out the inbound opportunities and get hundreds of inbound, and then I can be like, okay, 3, 4, okay, I want to talk to these people. 98, not as much. Very kind response, close it, and then I end up being able to create a lot more relationships through the online world, totally at scale, than I am able to like work a room.
Okay, so let's actually flip what I was saying then. So basically, you're the room. How do you act when somebody comes up to you in the first couple seconds? Like, what is something that somebody should not?
Like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah. like you just said, if somebody comes up preaching about what they're doing, you're probably not going to be as receptive to them as a person, I guess, or just as like a good relationship moving forward, because it's all about them. So what are some, I guess, advice things or what works when talking with Juan?
Oh, with me specifically? Honestly, I really like it when it's not about business. Like if someone just comes up and it's like, do you like this cheese? And I'm like, I like this other cheese better. And then we end up talking about the food, and then we just like connecting with like the human behind the business card, behind the title works really well with me actually. And it, after a while, because we're at a business event, it is like, so what is it that you do? And then we start talking, and I, in general, tend to be a very passionate, active listener, just in general, like as a default with people. So I ask a lot of questions, and if I see enough overlap, I'll just shout it out, like, oh, you're doing that. So actually, this is what I'm working on too, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's always about trying to figure out if I like the person and if what they're doing is really cool, about how do I provide more value than I'm going to take out of it. And more value doesn't have to be apples to apples. It's not like if they bring $1 million, I need to bring $1,000,001. It's like they bring in $1 million and I'm connecting their daughter to like the new school system because they just moved to California and they have no idea what city to move into. It's about identifying what do they consider as value and providing more value in whatever that social currency is in that situation.
As somebody who observes Juan a lot and is with him in a lot of these events, it's actually really funny when founders or startups walk up to him and a lot of people just start pitching and talking and talking and talking. And you think if they can just like say everything they do and within the first like 10 seconds or 10 minutes or whatever, that's how they get the message across and that's how they get what they want. And it's like, it's so funny to me sometimes because I know that they have no idea what Juan even does. Yeah. And if they knew what he was working on, and if they had asked him, they would get so much more value out of it. But because he's so kind and he doesn't interrupt ever, he just like keeps guiding them further and further into talking more. They walk away having talked for like an hour and knowing nothing about what he does because he doesn't interrupt. And a lot of VCs, a lot of investors actually are very similar. There's a lot of people, they are very, very kind. And I just moderated a panel the other day at DocuSign with Oak Venture Partners and LG Tech Ventures. And there were some really golden nuggets that they shared of how they want to be approached by investors. And a lot of VCs that we have in our network, we're also kind of in that business now, connecting startups to investors. So kind of the biggest advice there is to research the person you're talking to, find out what they even invest in. There's a lot of, most investors, most important people, they have a very specific thesis of what kind of deals they're looking for. And if your startup is not in that criteria, why even go down that route and pitch them every detail about their product, about everything you're doing? It's like, it might still be worth connecting with that person, but your angle of what you're sharing is going to be completely different, and you should always strive to have as much context of what they are doing before you just like blast them with that info.
Yeah, what I was going to say too, and you make a great point, like you may go after one VC or let's say, said person that you want to get connected to, and it could mean that person has, and I don't want to say, I'm doing this with air quotes, but with no connection really other than trying to network with their connections, right? And I think we've learned this as well as through your first degree of network, it could be an intro to someone that they are aware of. And I think looking at kind of networking as a very high level of interconnection of these relationships, really just making the groundwork, make it much easier for you to get connected to that said second or third person. It becomes extremely easier once you actually have that first few seconds with someone.
So yeah, that's one of the biggest mistakes we see early stage founders make. They walk into a room and they think it's about the pitching, it's about the convincing.
Yep.
And it's really not. It's about finding the right person to, like, for the right person who your company or where you're at right now is a good fit. It's about finding good fits, not about convincing people. Mm-hmm. And for some people, there's a lot of opportunities that you're not going to be the ideal fit for. A lot of people that actually can't help you. And really don't take offense to that. Like, research the opposite, take their feedback, take it slow, build relationships, and then just get connected from one person to the other.
I love that.
So I actually wanted to ask a simpler question that we get asked a lot. When you're at these events, when people are coming up to you, business cards, are they important or not? Like, if somebody gives you a card, are you throwing it in the garbage, or is the LinkedIn QR code the best way to go?
Yeah.
What,
from
your opinion, what do you think?
I feel just like the guy in New York that's like, I don't know how you. I don't know what the advice is for you, but like I can tell you what I do.
Yeah.
I don't use business cards. I don't have any business cards.
Wow.
I'll take your business card, but I will never look at
Yeah,
it.
look at that wallet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just straight
The
cash.
wallet's just fat in business cards right now. So yeah, I will take it, but what I do, because I'm consistently creating content that's one-dimensional on my social media platforms, wherever it is that I ask people to connect on, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I always create content around only one thing. So typically, we see ourselves as very multifaceted people. No, I'm not just Juan Campos that does fundraising for startups. I like tacos, and I like dogs, and I like video games, and
cheese.
And cheese and music, and we think of ourselves as these very complex characters, and so our social media presence reflects that. And we're always wondering why we're not growing more on social media, and it's because you getting into your car is you just getting into a Kia. Kim Kardashian getting into a car is getting into a Lamborghini. Mm-hmm. So we see what mainstream celebrities that already got their fame some other way do on social media, and we're like, okay, she's posting about her food, she's posting about her car, I'm gonna do the same. It's like, that's not how she became famous. She became famous, and now she's posting about her life, and it's a very exotic life, so it's very worthwhile for people to tune in and keep up to date with what she's doing. But the more practical approach for someone who doesn't already have a personal brand is to be much more one-dimensional and just be, this is literally all I'm about.
Yeah.
And there's a lowering of ego that needs to happen there, where we give up the cat memes and like all the other things that make you, and you just make it about this one kind of content. So with that being said, I made my LinkedIn one-dimensional, and I only post one kind of content on LinkedIn essentially, which is resources for startup founders and for them to raise more funds. And that's it. So the moment that I meet someone and they're saying, hey, how do I connect with you? I say, let's connect on LinkedIn. And the reason why is I know I will stay top of mind to them. Right. For sure. 8 months from now, it's not just going to be one random person they met. Yeah. The value, the compounding value of them having met me 8 months ago, it's just going to keep going up.
Exactly.
Yeah, bigger and bigger and bigger. And it went from just some guy that they met at a networking event to just like this omnipresent figure that they just can't get. It's like, wow, I think about this guy all the time. and sometimes they tell me like, I see you everywhere. Like, did you know that? And it's, oh guys, that's by design.
Yeah.
I wasn't crossing my fingers hoping
right.
you'd remember me. That's completely intentional.
Right.
So for me, I create content on one platform. I make that my main bucket, and I direct all of the connections that I make to that bucket. If I were living in LA, that would be Instagram. I'm living in Silicon Valley, it's LinkedIn. And the people, especially because of the people that I'm meeting, 40, 50, 60-year-olds, they're not going to have Instagram accounts, and if they do, they're not very active on it. So I'd rather stay omnipresent on LinkedIn.
Their Kia no.
So yeah, I don't want to not give practical advice, but at the very least, maybe hearing a different perspective on like the business card logic. It's right. I'm more of the thought process of becoming omnipresent on one channel, having a one-dimensional approach to it. So there's only one word that I want to be synonymous with right now, and that's startup fundraising.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's all the content you'll see. That's all my LinkedIn is, and that's it. So anyone I meet 8 months from now, they'll still just be thinking about me as like the startup fundraising guy. And the reason why is I want all opportunities from anyone I'm connected to and anyone they're connected to, all roads to lead to my inbox. And then I can filter out who I want to talk to. A little bit different.
Wow. A little different, but super specific.
Yeah.
You have to create your own personal brand, and that's exactly what this is. So anybody out there that's trying to make a name for yourself or get into an industry, do that.
Yeah. And I'll give the caveat too, because I know coming from New York on my side, business cards is like key. Like, you don't have a business card, basically don't come to an event, right? and people will even look at you in some cases, and like if you walk up to someone and they're like, oh, do you have a business card? And you say, either I ran out or I don't have them. There's definitely something there, but I think even moving over to California, I think it's extremely your case, right? You're going on Instagram, you're going on to LinkedIn, and it's, oh, connect me here, or here's my email, let's just go through that.
Totally.
But people who are basically first starting out and thinking about kind of this brand for their own self, I think having a business card in some manner, again from a New York angle, is more like a validation of like, yes, I am Alex Simon said CEO, right? That's all, again, in air quotes. But I do think that now moving forward with kind of the way that people are approaching networking, it's all about just kind of interconnecting and being online, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that to your point, that's particularly a California thing. I think here, if I show up in a suit to something, it's like I think people would be a little confused, like, why is this guy trying so hard?
Yeah.
But you show up in a hoodie, and it's like, this guy must be a billionaire.
Yeah.
You know, so there's like it's totally
great.
the opposite. So here, whenever
We
people
have
are
to
like,
stop. We have to stop talking about suits on,
I know.
on the podcast. I feel like
It's
becoming
we're
a
gonna
meme.
start burning it. Yeah.
So here, anytime someone's like, oh, you know, great conversation, I would love to stay connected. Do you have a business card? I say, no, I don't. Can I add you on LinkedIn? I think, this is my impression at least, I think here it actually plays in my favorites. Like, wow, this guy doesn't have
Like,
a business
whoa,
card.
yeah.
Like, he doesn't need business cards.
Yeah.
Am I doing something wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
I
but
love that.
it's also just having a peace of mind of like, I know who I want to connect to. I'm getting the inbound opportunities. I am, like, mindset wise past a point where I think that's the secret sauce.
Got it.
For
That makes-
like, so much of my attention is on creating a brand where I'm able to filter out the opportunities, and I'm able to cold ping people, and then they're like, who's this guy that just pinged me? And they're like, oh wow, he's like onto something.
Right.
So much of my mindset is there that I attribute almost no value in winning at the tactical level with like the business card. Like, how do you present it? How do you share it? It's like, to me, zero in comparison to the upside that I've learned and earned from the social aspect of it, social media.
Perfect advice. Yeah, we've got just a couple minutes left. What I want to do is, if somebody does want to connect with you, how do they go about doing so?
So I have these great business cards. Just email me.
I'll pass them out right now.
Yeah.
Obviously LinkedIn. So look me up. My first name Juan, middle name Felipe, last name Campos. Juan Felipe Campos. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm easily accessible on other platforms. You can typically find me under my handle Juanikin, like Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars, but Juanikin. So JUANNIKIN, all one word, all lowercase. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you want to connect. I'm happy to do that.
Perfect.
Same here. On LinkedIn, probably the best place, Eva, and my last name Reder, middle name Christine, but if you type in Eva Reder, there's not that many of them, I come up. And also happy to connect on Facebook and just stay in touch.
That's your real last name, not like Darth Vader? Because we're bringing in all these different things. I just want to be
No, real name.
Okay,
Real
perfect.
name.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. And you guys know all about. Leave comments down below what you want to hear from next time. I think the next one we have a couple. You want to introduce the next show?
Oh yeah. So the next guest that we'll have is Nick and Sarah, which they've been comedians now for a few years, actually quite some time.
Quite a while, yeah.
But they are hysterical. They run I would say like a comedy show over in LA, over in New York as well, and sometimes up in Canada. So I'm really excited to have them because it's going to be a completely different, I would say, like angle, whether it's, hysterical, kind of trials and tribulations that they've dealt with building their brands.
Bootstrapping that up is going to be completely different from a startup, but all relevant information. We're really excited to have them on. So yeah, give us a follow. Check it out next week. Guys, thank you so much for checking out The Break. We'll see you next time.
See you. Thanks.